Welcome to members and members of the public. I think we have a few people on this call possibly in this session that weren't on the morning application, so I'll just perhaps run through a few things again. I need to advise that this is the first/second meeting of the licensing subcommittee and the meeting is being live streamed. My name is Dan Brown. I'm District Councillor for Wembury and Brixton, and I'm Chairman of Licensing at South Hams District Council. If I could ask first of all Councillor Holway, then Councillor Reeve to introduce themselves, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm Tom Holway. I'm Ward Member for Ermington and Ugborough, and I'm Vice Chair of Licensing at South Hams. Thank you,
Councillor Holway. Councillor Reeve.
Yes, and I'm Helen Reeve, and I'm Ward Member for Stoke, Fleming, Blackhorton, Hole and Morley, and I'm a member of this committee.
Thank you very much. The meeting will be adjourned if any committee member or a party registered to speak loses connection during the meeting. Unfortunately, the meeting will not be suspended for members of the public or the press if they encounter such problems. The chair will be assisted by a gatekeeper who will be responsible for admitting speakers and advising the chair of any connection difficulties. Please respect the chair given the difficult job of chairing a virtual meeting, and please respect other speakers. Microphones will be muted when not speaking and only use video when addressing the committee, please. Each speaker will have 10 minutes to make their presentation. Please ensure that all representations relate to one of the 4 statutory licensing committee objectives, as this will be the focus of the subcommittee's consideration of the application. The committee will also have regard to the council's licensing policy. If possible, please do not repeat points that have already been made, but please feel free to advise the committee if you agree with the representations made by another speaker. In addition to the licensing officer Naomi Stacey, other officers in attendance are Janice Young from Democratic Services, who is clerk to the meeting, and Becky Folds, solicitor to the subcommittee. Officers may advise the chair that they need to interrupt to get clarity on what is being asked for the record. They are not being rude. Right. So the subcommittee will retire to make their decision after this application is heard, and we will consider both the applications that we've heard this morning and this one that we are hearing this afternoon. This will be done in private, and the solicitor will be available to the subcommittee to answer any questions on matters of law. Unfortunately, I'm not able to advise how long it will take us to deliberate on the applications, and therefore once all parties have been heard in respect of the second application, which is the one we're hearing now, the hearing will finish. All parties will be advised of the committee's decision in writing by the 18th of August. So I now turn, if I may, to agenda item 5, which is the application to vary premises licence of Morrison's, Coronation Road, Totnes. I'll just quickly outline how we will undertake this for any new people that have joined us. First of all, our licence specialist, Naomi Stacey, will introduce the report, after which committee members will be able to ask questions of the licensing specialist. Then it'll be the turn of the applicant to put their representation forward, again, after which time committee members are able to ask appropriate questions. After that, we will hear from the objectors to the application, of which I believe we have a new somebody offering a representation this afternoon that wasn't this morning, who is Mr. Kai Edwards, I believe. For the record, several of the people that made representations this morning, including Miss Carmen Luscombe, Benita Curtis, and Claire de Valero, along with Councillor Hodgson, confirmed that they wished for the comments they made this morning at this morning's application to be carried over to this application. So we will be having, after the applicant has spoken and any questions, we will be hearing from Mr. Kai Edwards and Councillor John Birch. Okay, I hope that makes things fairly clear as to how we will proceed. So without further ado, oh, we have got Jackie. Okay. So without further ado, perhaps I can ask Naomi Stacey, the licensing specialist, to introduce her report, please. Naomi.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, of course. So just to summarise, the purpose of this application, which we've received from Morrison's in Coronation Road, Totnes, is to vary the hours for sale of alcohol from 6 AM to midnight, which it is currently, to being 24 hours. And also to include late night refreshment, which is the sale of hot food and hot drinks between 11 PM and 5 AM, and to add 24 hours opening. A copy of that application is in your papers at Appendix A, and a copy of the current premises licence is at Appendix B. There are currently no restrictions on the opening hours of the premises other than in relation to Sunday trading hours, so the application for 24-hour opening is not actually required. So it is just the alcohol sales and the late night refreshment. You'll see that no additional conditions to promote the licensing objectives have been proposed as part of this application. Therefore, all of those currently in place on the premises licence will remain the same unless specifically removed. And these are listed on the premises licence at Appendix B. Should the application be granted, additional conditions can be placed upon the premises licence, as I'm sure you're aware, if they're appropriate to promote the licensing objectives. So the reason for the hearing is that we have received 16 representations in relation to this application from local residents, from district councillors, the town council and some local organisations, and they are shown at Appendix C. Some of the issues raised include concerns that extended availability of alcohol will lead to increased antisocial criminal behaviour, underage alcohol sales, noise and disturbance, and litter. We've not received any representations from any of the responsible authorities. For the benefit of those that may not have attended this morning's hearing, I will just reiterate that you'll see reference in some of the representations to public health and linking this to public safety. It's very clear in the Home Office statutory guidance that public health cannot be considered when determining a premises licence application. Any reference to public safety must only be in relation to the safety of people using the premises. In addition, there's also reference in some of the representations to the need for 24 alcohol sales in the town. This also cannot legally be taken into consideration. So just to confirm, the decision today must only be based on the impact of the sale of alcohol between the hours of midnight and 6 AM and the provision of late night refreshments between 11 PM and 5 AM being included on the premises licence, and the impact of those on the four licensing objectives, which are the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, prevention of public nuisance and the protection of children from harm, and no other issues can be taken into consideration. So please let me know if you've got any questions or if you need any further clarification.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Stacey. Councillor Holway or Councillor Reeve, have you got any questions of Naomi at this stage?
Nothing from me, Chairman.
No, I'm happy, thank you.
Thank you. Just one point possibly. Councillor Hodgson, I see you're present. At the meeting this morning, you said that you're happy for the comments that you made this morning to be carried over. Can I just confirm whether or not you intend to speak this afternoon?
No, I don't intend to speak. I just wanted to listen in and be available, because I was actually quite surprised and actually, well, pretty appalled, to be honest, at the amount of airtime that was given to the Morrison's representative, and that's why I'm listening in this afternoon.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so if there's no further questions of the licensing officer, I shall move on to the applicant. So, Mr. Taylor, again, you have 10 minutes, which will be timed by our clerk, Miss Young, and when the time comes, she will, I'm sure, interject. So, but please do go ahead, Mr. Taylor.
Councillor, thank you very much indeed. Again, on the matters of procedure, do I get a closing speech again, as one normally would? It is important, given the fact that it's very easy, as we did this morning, we get sidetracked into the irrelevant.
If you do decide that you wish to make a closing statement, I shan't stop it. However, I will also give Councillor Birch the opportunity to do the same. So, so that's fine, as long as that's okay with Councillor Birch as well. If should he wish to speak. Okay.
Understood.
Chair, so may I just interject that, and Mr. Edwards?
Oh yes, sorry, indeed, yes, and Mr. Edwards, sorry, yep. Okay, fine, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So, very similar application to this morning, and I'll take this as quickly as I can because I don't want to simply repeat everything, but I'm very aware that Mr. Edwards didn't hear this morning. As far as this application is concerned, then, this store can already open 24 hours a day. It can sell all products except alcohol and anything above ambient temperature. So we can already sell alcohol 18 hours a day between 6 a.m. and midnight, and there are no issues with that at the moment. As far as the store is concerned, at the moment we are trading 7 until 11, but we want to be able to trade 24 hours a day on occasions. Now that will be through the summer, the run up to Christmas. We want the flexibility to be able to operate 24 hours. Now I was criticised this morning for misleading the committee on the hours of the petrol filling station. We've checked the hours and the hours that I gave are exactly right. If you look on Google, they're wrong. And I think that's probably where the confusion arose. But the hours that I gave this morning are absolutely right. So as far as this application is concerned, again, it's against the backdrop of your policy, which is that supermarkets will be allowed to sell alcohol for consumption off the premises during the normal hours they intend to be open for shopping, unless there are exceptional reasons relating to the licensing objectives, in particular crime and disorder and public nuisance. And that could be if an individual shop is known to be a focus of disorder. We know from this morning, we know from the attitude of the responsible authorities that there is no evidence to suggest that the sale of alcohol from this store at the moment is a problem, and there's certainly not a focus of disorder and disturbance. And again, and I make no apologies for this, we need to concentrate on what is relevant. A representation is only relevant if it relates to the likely effect of the grant. And for a representation to be, a representation to a variation to be relevant, it must be confined to the subject matter. It must relate to that window between midnight and 6 that we can't currently sell alcohol. We're not considering whether there's any need, benefit, wider issues. We understand the concerns of the local residents, and we appreciate all the good that the local bodies all do. But what we're considering is the likely effect of this application. And what do the experts say? Well, there's a list of them on page, on paragraph 2.17 of your agenda, which I'll just go to. The people, the statutory consultees, Devon and Cornwall Police, Devon and Somerset Fire and Rescue, Devon Safeguarding Children's Board, Devon County Council Trading Standards, Devon Drug and Alcohol Action Team, the Planning Department, South Hams Environmental, Health and Safety and Pollution Control. None of them have chosen to make an application, to a representation to this application. So, and it's against that backdrop that I make it. So what are we trying to do here? Well, very similar to this morning, we're trying to create that bridge between which we can't currently sell alcohol. So we're applying to be able to sell alcohol when we're open anyway, between midnight and 6 a.m. And with this one, we're looking to permit late night refreshments. Now, I need to be very, very clear about this. We're not seeking to operate as a takeaway or anything like that. The cafe won't be open through the night. We need late night refreshments to sell hot products. We sell coffee or anything above ambient temperature. So think rotisserie chickens, think hot bread, that sort of thing. That's why we need late night refreshments. And again, the reason for the application is, you heard Mrs. Nichols this morning. Morrison's identified a number of areas at the beginning of lockdown where it was felt that we would see an influx of tourists as lockdown was relaxed, places where there's lots of self-catering and campsite accommodation. And we heard this morning that applications have been made in Cornwall, in Devon, North Yorkshire, North Norfolk, Pembrokeshire. We've had applications granted in Liskeard, in Bude and Newquay. Well, Newquay already had 24 hours. So that's what we're seeking to do. And the reason is that we want to be able to provide the ability for people to shop and buy their full shopping basket when they're most comfortable doing it. Simple as that. Shopping is changing, members of the committee, because of coronavirus. People may want to go out at 2 o'clock in the morning and do their weekly shop. We would like to be able to cater for those people. Licensing objectives, well, again, it's as existing, what we do already. Full digital CCTV. We talked this morning about the training program, the the fact that the training program is refreshed. Challenge 25, the till prompts, the electronic refusals lock, the independent test purchasing. It's all stuff that we do, and the effect of all of this, members of the committee, is this store operates without any difficulty whatsoever and without complaint. Now, we only touched on it in the last one, but a testament to the quality of Morrison's policies and procedures is that this company has over 550 stores, around 400 petrol filling stations that also have licensings, and it has never faced review proceedings or prosecutions under Licensing Act 2003. You heard Mrs. Nichols this morning say that they guard their licenses very, very jealously. They are very precious commodities and they will do nothing to prejudice the existence of that license. Are we going to do anything more moving forward if we're open and selling alcohol 24 hours? Well, what we will do, and what we do at all of the stores, is we risk assess the need for additional security. Of course, there'll be more shop staff operating. We will risk assess the need for additional security. It's the sort of thing we talk to the police about. Again, you heard this morning, we have their relationship with the police and we work very, very closely with them. And what we're seeking to do then is sell alcohol in the period midnight to 6 when we're already open. Now, I'm not going to do what I did this morning and go through the first raft of representations saying that's not relevant, that's not relevant, that's not relevant, because I made those points this morning. You as an experienced committee know what's relevant and what's not. But again, what we must do is concentrate on what there is. So we're not concentrating on the availability. Again, we're not in a position where there's a cumulative impact policy where you've already decided that alcohol in the area, the availability of it, causes problems. Again, we're in the area of the PSPO. Nothing changes. Deliveries. This application will not affect delivery schedules. Again, we know that we're proximate to the skate park. But is there any evidence in any of those representations that we've already read of any issues that the sale of alcohol currently causes? We know that Morrison's is a responsible retailer. It does things properly. What I must do at this stage is extend an apology to Mr. Edwards. His representation says that complaints have been made to the store over complaints that he's made. So he's made contact with the store over being disturbed. Mrs. Nichols has seen that and she will take that up directly, and what we will do is we will put the current store manager in touch with Mr. Edwards directly if he's happy to do that. Now, that's nothing to do with this application, but again, we are concerned that something seems to have been missed there and we don't know how that's happened. Finally, we're into the issues raised by Dr. Cooper. We heard Naomi earlier say public health, not an issue here today. So members of the committee, I have taken it extremely quickly. You've heard it all before. I am going to insist that we concentrate only on what is relevant and the likely effects of selling alcohol in that bridge. Other than that, Mrs. Nichols and I are both available for questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I think the committee is very much aware of what it can and cannot consider as material considerations in this element. So for clarity then, members, obviously Mr. Taylor has had the chance to speak. Next we will hear from Mr. Edwards and Mr. Birch. In allowing Mr. Taylor a chance to sum up, I shall also allow Mr. Edwards' sort of secondary comments should he make it, and I will finish off with Councillor Birch, after which I shall not accept any further comments from with regards to this. But Councillor Reeve and Councillor Holway, do you have any comments or questions of Mr. Taylor's representation?
None at this stage, thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'd just like to ask.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Could I just ask on the security? What security is it provided for the staff? And well, you know, it's late night. What security is do Morrison's put in place in their other 24-hour stores?
Mr. Taylor, are you able to?
Yes, what we do is we conduct a risk assessment, and where that risk assessment identifies an additional risk of being open and selling alcohol 24 hours, we will have additional security staff. We will probably have an SIA registered security officer operating at this store, but that again is subject to the risk assessment. Mrs. Nichols, you're closer to operation than me. Could you just confirm the position?
Yes, that will be correct. If we are mindful to, if the committee is mindful to grant the application and allow to sell alcohol between midnight and 6 a.m, one SIA guard will be on duty to work with the store on the prevention of crime and disorder.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Reeve, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mrs. Foulds, I believe you wished to ask a question or make a comment.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a couple of questions. Just picking up that last point, though, there seemed to be a slight, maybe my confusion, but there seemed to be, Mrs. Nichols seemed to be suggesting that there would be a guard at the premises, and Mr. Taylor suggested that it would be subject to a risk assessment. So, again, just clarification whether there would be a condition, or you'd accept a condition on a guard being at the premises.
Becky, I can confirm that I'm happy that a condition subject to the grant in relation to a guard being on the premises between midnight and 6 a.m, which is the additional hours that we're asking for in the application.
Okay.
Thank you. Just for everybody's benefit, just the discussion about conditions now isn't to say that the members have made any decision. It's just that we have that discussion in the open. So I'm not suggesting, certainly for the benefit of Mr. Edwards, that the application will be approved. I'm just trying to clarify what conditions would the applicant would be minded to accept if the members were minded to approve the application. It shouldn't be taken as an inference of any decision being made. That's certainly not the case, but that's helpful. Thank you, Mrs. Nichols. Just another one, Mr. Taylor, 2 points, Mr. Taylor, what you mentioned, that you wanted the flexibility to open hours summer and seasonal, which suggests to me that that's not every day of the year then. So again, has there been any thought as to whether or not the opening hours could be restricted to certain calendar months?
Mr. Taylor?
We are not suggesting that it be limited at all. What we'd like is flexibility. Nobody saw coronavirus coming, and we need to be able to operate flexibly. If we had, we've got 6 a.m. till midnight at the moment. We're operating 7 till 11. If we had 24 hours and you were to ask me, do you think you'll be trading on a wet Tuesday in February, 24 hours, I'd say probably not. If you were to ask me if we're still social distancing, will we want it in December? Yeah, very probably, because we want to be able to provide for people. So it's the flexibility that we're after. We already have longer hours than we use, but we want the flexibility to be able to basically sell the full product range 24 hours. We can sell everything else but.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Taylor. Mrs. Foulds, is that?
There was one other point arising from the application form. Section 12 mentions that, and I haven't got made a note, but section 12 refers to the late night refreshment taking place indoors and outdoors. Mr. Taylor suggested obviously that the cafe wouldn't be open, and where there's a car park and an area, certainly at the moment, where there's where they put out goods for sale. I just wanted to clarify that there's no intention to have an outdoor sale. You weren't intending to sell refreshments. It's just to clarify that point on your application form.
No, there's absolutely no intention to do that. The reason we put indoors and outdoors is, of course, people can buy coffee indoors. They sometimes walk around with it and consume it indoors. They sometimes take it away with them, as they will take away their rotisserie chicken. They very rarely eat their rotisserie chickens whilst they're walking around the store, but they sometimes drink their coffee. So it's a cover-all, but there is absolutely no suggestion that we're going to be basically having anything popping up outside or in the car park.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Taylor. Thank you, Mrs. Foulds. Okay, so next we have Mr. Kai Edwards, and just to reiterate, particularly for Mr. Edwards' benefit, we did have a number of representations this morning, and those speakers asked for their comments to be carried over to this meeting. So, Mr. Edwards, as everybody else, you have 10 minutes. Would you like an officer to sort of interject when you have 1 minute left as a warning? Can you hear me, Mr. Edwards?
Hello?
Hello, is that Mr. Edwards?
Yeah, speaking, yeah.
Hello there. Sorry, did you hear what I just said?
Yeah, I did, yeah, thanks. Yeah, that'd be great if you could.
So, okay, Miss Young will interject.
Won't take long anyway, but...
That's all right, so you have 10 minutes, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so first of all, I'd like to thank Richard Taylor for suggesting that the manager might get in touch with me directly with regards to noise complaints, because that hasn't happened so far. And also I appreciate that actually the deliveries may not be entirely relevant to this application, and I wasn't actually aware that Morrison's had 24-hour licensing for the rest of the store already. But I'm still concerned that it will create extra noise and disturbance overnight with regard to people arriving, parking, and obviously if they're selling alcohol in the middle of the night, then that could create disturbance as well. And also, I do know that when the hours changed from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. at night, that did result in a lot more noise from deliveries and overnight lorries, and they haven't explained to me why that is, and actually haven't done anything to do anything about it despite my complaints. So I am a bit worried that generally having longer hours and it it's going to create more noise, and like Richard Taylor said, there's going to be more staff, there's going to be more security on site. So that's my concern, really. Yeah, that's basically it.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Edwards. Councillor Holway, Councillor Reeve, do you have any comments or questions for Mr. Edwards?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, yeah, just for me to get it straight in my mind, Mr. Edwards, over what kind of a period have you been making complaints to Morrison's?
It's several years now. It's probably 3 or 4 years. Okay. And I haven't made them that regularly. I've actually resorted to sleeping on the other side of the house, as I said in my original objection, because I just find the deliveries too much. And obviously that may not be relevant to this, but they could still try and address that as one of the issues.
Yeah, Chairman, that concerns me greatly. We've been told that Morrison's have an unblemished record and no problems whatsoever. And yet here we are on our own doorstep, and complaints seem to have been ignored for the last few years. And from what Mr. Taylor said earlier, it suggests that actually Totnes Morrison's have accepted those comments and will be looking into it and addressing it. Clearly, that's a concern. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Holway. Councillor Reeve, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, so I will now ask Councillor Birch. Is there any, 10 minutes, you know the drill. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, before I start my 10 minutes, I have a procedural question, that Mr. Chairman, that I wonder if perhaps could be answered by Mrs. Folds. And the can I have confirmation, please, that the submissions and the statements, well, the submissions that have been made prior to this hearing and the statements that are made during this hearing are accepted by your committee as evidence in opposing the application? I just require confirmation that that is the case.
Well, we're here to listen to what everybody's had to say, so we'll certainly consider that as part of our deliberations. Mrs. Fold, do you have any comment to add on that?
Yes, I think that I understand why the question has been made, because Mr. Taylor has put a lot of emphasis on the fact, and I understand both sides, that the representations have to be relevant, and they have to be relevant to the licensing objectives. I think really his emphasis is on the likely effect, and certainly where members have not got any information from the responsible authorities regarding crime and disorder or nuisance, then that does mean, that there is, the police would normally take the lead on that. So that does mean that the evidence, if you were minded, you need to have evidence if you were minded to refuse the application. And I think Mr. Taylor is emphasising that the evidence is, I think he would suggest, I might put words into his mouth, that it's anecdotal rather than any greater and any not provided by the responsible authorities. To that, I would say it is certainly when you make your decision, you have to determine the application, and you will decide what weight to give the information that you've been provided, either in writing or in person. Certainly in person, where you've got the opportunity to put questions to people, you may sometimes give more weight to that because people have made that representation orally as well, and put themselves available for questions. But I would certainly be expecting the committee to consider all the representations that have been made, but you will have to make your decision based on the licensing objectives.
Okay.
Councillor Burns, I can assure you that the committee has taken due notice of all representations that have been made throughout both this hearing and the last, and that it'll certainly be important in the deliberations that we make. So hope that helps.
Thank you.
Your representation.
Thanks. Just before I start my 10 minutes, can just make the point that Mr. Taylor has said on several occasions this morning and also this afternoon that there is no evidence before your committee. I disagree, so I'll start my presentation, if that's okay.
Yep.
Thank you. So, as I mentioned a moment ago, Mr. Taylor on several occasions has said that there is no evidence before you to refuse his or Morrison's application. I disagree, and what I will seek to do is to draw your attention to those statements or submissions where there is evidence in support of the objections to the application. And what is the most important part, or a fact that you really ought to take into consideration, is that after 5 o'clock in the afternoon, there is no off-license facilities other than Morrison's. There are no other facilities within the town centre where you can purchase off-license alcohol. Morrison's is the only place, whether it's the store or the garage. That being the case, there is an alcohol-related problem in Totnes, and that the evidence for that is the fact that we have this public safety order that was discussed at length this morning, that in itself is evidence of there being an alcohol problem in Totnes. The problem manifests itself mainly in the evenings and the night. One of the main sources of the problem is caused by the fact that those who are perpetrating antisocial behaviour as a result of alcohol are in the main purchasing alcohol from Morrison's because they cannot purchase it from any other facilities. So Mr. Taylor says that there are no issues with the current alcohol sales and there is no evidence of disorder. I would beg to differ. The evidence is the fact that Morrison's store and garage is the only place where you can purchase alcohol after 5 o'clock. There is a problem. There are problems after this time, and as a result, I would submit that there are issues with the current alcohol sales that are being made by Morrison's, and this, if this application for an extension is granted, that position will go from bad to worse. And in fact, the evidence within the documents or the submissions or the statements that are made today goes to support the view that there is an alcohol problem within Totnes. So and I would ask you just to bear in mind also that the store is situated just immediately adjacent to the protection order as shown on the maps that were illustrated this morning. So in my view, as sure as night follows day, the increase in opening hours for the sale of alcohol is going to increase the problem that we have in Totnes and further drain the local police resources. If I could refer to the statement I made, and this again is evidence of there being a problem, and I state, residents in the area already suffer noise nuisance and antisocial behaviour at all hours of the day and night. They have endured this inconvenience for a considerable period of time, and the granting of the variation application will exacerbate the situation. If I could also then turn to the important statement of Carol Whitty, who's made this statement on behalf of the Totnes Caring. She says in her statement, and I quote, when she says we, this is Totnes Caring, we believe that an extended 24-hour licence is likely to encourage longer drinking hours. As the shop car park borders the river path, we are concerned that people will congregate to continue their drinking in that area and put themselves at risk. This is an important point, and I believe that's something you should certainly take into consideration. She also says, we already have a public space protection order in place as antisocial behaviour related to alcohol has increased over the years. There have been several incidents, including damage to shop windows. 2 valuable windows at the Totnes Museum were punched through, and also there has been cases of threatening behaviour. Then you need to look at the evidence provided by Liz Waterson, who is from the Totnes Street Pastors. She says in her submission, and I quote, we often notice too groups of youngsters gathering outside Morrison's, often mixing with those coming out having just purchased alcohol. That is a regular occurrence. Gatherings outside of Morrison's, gatherings of youth outside of Morrison's store where drink is being purchased by those who are older than them. This will increase further if the application before you is approved. Also, I'd like to make the point, draw your attention to what Mr. Mike Waterson says. He says, and I quote, as a school governor, I'm aware that there is a problem of underage drinking in Totnes. Teenagers do hang around Morrison's supermarket on some evenings and manage to obtain alcohol. The increasing of hours of supply late into the night increases the possibility of teens obtaining alcohol and would encourage more of them to stay out late at night. This is a risk in itself without the added risk of alcohol. Further evidence. Then finally, the evidence of Benita Curtis, where she says in the document submitted, quotes, and I quote, "There are currently about 8 Rust sleepers who have various levels of addiction. It would not be helpful for them to have 24-hour access to alcohol." I've gone through the various evidence statements, submissions before you, and I'd ask you to consider all of those, and I've picked out the relevant parts which in my view are evidence to show that this application should be refused. Now, just one other point to make is that one second. Mr. Taylor says that the reason that Morrison's require this extension, and I'm paraphrasing his words, he's saying that this extension is needed that tourists and visitors to the area can purchase, and I again paraphrase, alcohol throughout the night. I very much doubt if that is the case. The tourists and visitors who come to town are well in bed before 12 o'clock at night, and I think that that is has no substance at all as a grounds for granting the license. Finally, he says that he seems to imply that all the experts support this application. They do not. There are no submissions. There is no evidence from any of the experts in support of this application. It was open to Morrison's to call these experts to give evidence. They chose not to, and therefore please do not, and I would ask you, please do not put any credence on the fact that there has not been any response from these so-called experts. In fact, if you look at the list, I doubt if many of them would like to be classified as experts on the consumption of alcohol. So that is my submission, and I hope you find it helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Birch. Much appreciated. Councillors Holway and Reeve, any questions or comments for Councillor Birch at this point?
Well, thank you, Chairman. I just one question. I possibly in error always thought that pubs could sell alcohol as off sales as well as on sales, and so I just wanted to be certain that none of the pubs in Totnes are able to have off sales as well as on sales.
I can't really answer that one, except that I very much doubt if that happens. The drink of the moment that apparently, and I have no experience of this, but I've been informed that the drink of the moment is large bottles of vodka that when mixed with illegal drugs produces various highs, etc. And I very much doubt that the users, the consumers of alcohol and drugs will very much go into the pubs in Totnes and purchase a bottle of vodka. I think it will probably come from Morrison's store.
Okay, actually,
thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Birch. I don't know if Mrs. Stacey is actually able to shed any light on Councillor Holway's question.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Yes, just to confirm, the number of the pubs in Totnes are able to sell off sales, and since the Business and Planning Act came into effect couple of weeks ago now, all premises can sell off sales until the end of next September 2021. Obviously, whether people use it to purchase off sales, I can't comment, but they do have the ability to do so if they wish.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Stacey. Splendid. Councillor Reeve, any comments, questions, or?
No, nothing, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we've heard the representations from the three speakers, and I also ask members to, in their thinking at the moment, consider, as I've said before, the comments received by our speakers this morning, which they've asked for us to consider alongside this application as well. I will now turn to those speakers again for closing comments, and I would reiterate these are closing comments, after which time you will not be able to speak. So again, Mr. Taylor, your surmising remarks, please.
Sorry, Chair, I couldn't turn that on. So, as I said this morning, we need to determine an application on the basis of real evidence. That's what the case law, and the case is Thwaites, it's Her Honour Justice Black, paragraph 63 of the Thwaites case, says you must make an application, must make a determination on the basis of real evidence, not supposition, not guesswork, not prejudices, but real evidence. So what evidence have we got that the sale of alcohol from Morrison's store is causing any problems at the moment, from which we can then extrapolate, will there be any problems between 12 and 6? Well, there's no evidence about that whatsoever. Whatever Councillor Birch says, it's a fact that the experts, according to the Home Office, do not oppose this application. He says, oh, they could have called them. Well, do you know what? There's no need, because they don't object to the application. You're in the position, members of the committee, of looking at evidence, balancing it and determining what the quality is. Who is right about child safeguarding? Is it the responsible authority, or is it Councillor Birch? Who is right about antisocial behaviour, noise? Councillor Birch or the experts? Whose evidence are you going to prefer? Councillor Birch, oh, it's the only place after 5 o'clock you can buy alcohol. It's clearly not correct. Well, it's very, very easy to say things, and you will weigh whether or not that is good evidence or not. The fact that somebody says kids are hanging around outside doesn't make it evidence. We talk to the police. We know that there's no issue with it. We talk to the store. We know there's no issue with it. So on the one hand, we've got good evidence of a national company operating premises and not a shred of evidence of any difficulty whatsoever caused by alcohol sales from these premises. So on the basis we don't have an issue now, how can we say that there's going to be an issue between 12 and 6? We can't. What else have we had? People congregating by the river. It's going to happen. Listen, we've not heard a shred of evidence that it happens now. Why is it suddenly going to happen after midnight? Again, it doesn't necessarily follow. Easy to say, but very, very difficult to substantiate. It is a criminal offence to give evidence to this committee that is misleading. We've had some this afternoon. Oh, it's the only place after 5 that you can do off sales. It's just not true. So what I'd ask you to do, members of the committee, have a look at that, at the evidence, look at the quality of it, look who's saying it, and judge it accordingly. In my respectful submission, there are no exceptional reasons why this application should not be granted. These premises are not a focus of disorder. There are concerns that it may be. But if you're going to refuse an application on the basis of what might happen, you can never grant an application again. It's wrong. We need to concentrate on the likely effect of this application, look at the evidence that there is. To refuse this, you're making a finding of fact on the evidence that you've heard, that allowing shoppers to buy alcohol in a store that's already open will impact on the licensing objectives, and there is no evidence to support that. A refusal, in my respectful submission, is contrary to your own policy. So in all of the circumstances, again, I invite that you allow Morrison's the flexibility to provide those longer shopping hours. Impose the condition that Mrs. Nichols offered, that between midnight and 6, if the store is open for the sale of alcohol, a minimum of 1 SIA security guard will be engaged. The condition has to be relevant to the variation, so those are the only hours you can do it for. So members of the committee, if there is a problem, if Armageddon happens, because shoppers are allowed to fill their to do all of their shopping instead of most of it, then there is always the possibility of review. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I would remind, though, that, as said at the beginning, to be respectful of other speakers. Okay. Mr. Edwards, any concluding remarks from yourself, sir? Mr. Edwards, any concluding remarks from you?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Birch, your concluding remarks, please.
Yes, I'll keep them brief. Members of the committee, you have been advised by Mrs. Faulds that the submissions, statements that you have read, that you've heard today, are evidence. There are evidence, there is, and I have quoted some examples of evidence in support of the objection to this application. I believe that Mr. Taylor is seeking to convince you that there is no evidence. I would argue otherwise, and quite clearly I would implore you to give due weight to the evidence that where I made particular reference to the problems arising. Again, Mr. Taylor makes reference to the fact, or seems to be suggesting, that experts are there to support his application. I would once again repeat, no, they are not. It was open to him to call these experts to support this application. He chose not to. Furthermore, he had an opportunity to provide evidence or call witnesses to rebut the evidence that was referred to by me in my submission. He chose not to call evidence to rebut that. The evidence is before you, and I would once again ask that in view of the overwhelming evidence that this application should not proceed, I would ask that it be refused. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay then, thank you, Councillor Birch. So we've now heard from all the speakers as regards this application. Thank you to everybody who has taken the time to speak. The committee will now will shortly retire to deliberate over both the application that we've just heard and the application this morning, and we will issue a decision in writing to both the applicant and indeed those who have made representations. I believe it's by the 18th of August, and on the council website for members of the public and press. So councillors, along with Mrs. Faulds, will now retire to Mrs. Faulds will be providing us with legal advice to ensure the decision we come to is legally substantiated. But apart from that, thank you all very much for your attendance, and good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.